5, 6, 7, 8.
Rebrand. Yay.
Woohoo.
We're here to rebrand.
New look, same
New look,
us.
same us. Different costume. Here we go.
Different outfits.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Gilmore to Say with Tara and Haley. I'm Tara. This is Haley. Hi, Haley.
Hi, Tara.
Happy Rebrand Day.
Happy Rebrand Day. I like your outfit.
I like your outfit too. We're twinning. If you're not joining us on YouTube, you should be because we're in the same outfit.
We look exactly the same, just like twins.
like bestie, instead of like mother,
like the
daughter.
Parent Trap.
Oh, yeah. Kind of like
You
that.
could totally Parent Trap someone right now.
We very much could. No one would be able to tell us apart. In fact, I think a lot of people would be maybe not able to tell us apart if they didn't know what we looked like until today.
Yeah, if you don't follow us on Instagram or YouTube and don't watch us, and you are just an audio girly, you would never know what we looked like
Which
until
one's
today.
Tara and which one's
until
Haley.
our faces showed up on the art. You don't know which one is which. How would you know? Which is which?
Which is which? It's true. Oh my gosh. It is so crazy to finally have our faces on the Gilmore to Say logo. It's wild because up until this point, if you've been with us for the last 2.5 years, or maybe you haven't, if you're just joining us, hi, welcome. But
hi, hey, what's up? How'd you get here?
Yeah, what are you doing here?
You weren't even
We're
here
glad
last
you're
week.
But in the event that you were just joining us, we've been doing this for about 2.5 years, and we finally, everything kind of fell together. Everything came full circle, and we have finally put ourselves on the cover of Gilmore to Say, because up until this point, Haley and I have talked a lot about how we've like really wanted to center the show Gilmore Girls, which of course is what we're here to talk about. But over the last 2.5 years, we've incorporated our friendship so much into this podcast and who we are and our opinions that we felt like, yeah, we should probably be on the cover too. You should probably know who you're talking to.
Because so much of the lore, the folklore here in Taylor Swift month, of the podcast is our friendship, because we wouldn't be friends without the podcast.
Yeah.
Like truly, like I would not have like dove into such a relationship with you had we not been on FaceTime every single day of the week.
I know, it's true.
And so incorporating that into the podcast as much as possible felt really important, because Gilmore Girls is always at the center of it. But the if it's like the earth, you know, the core is Gilmore Girls, but that it's not the crust. What's the middle part called?
The earth?
Wow. What did you say?
The earth.
No.
I was just kidding.
Mantle. The mantle.
The mantle. Gosh, it's been a minute since I've been in a science class.
I know. Wow. Earth sciences, the science of the earth. Wow. Why did we start with science? This is not this is a crazy moment for us, but that mantle is Gilmore's. Where's this going? In the earth. Okay. Gilmore Girls is the core.
Yeah.
We ourselves, our friendship is the mantle. The crust can be the besties. And we are just one earth world orbiting each other together. The earth does not orbit itself.
It doesn't.
The science is ending now.
I don't know where we were going with that, but
I don't either. But I wanted to incorporate. We wanted to be a part of it as much as Gilmore Girls is a part of it, because that feels what the podcast is. Because when we had our like first iteration, which was the coffee cup by itself, which was a Terra Canva exclusive.
Oh my God.
That we just kind of put together. I gave input.
She did.
And then we moved on from that with our Emily Kelly design, who we love her so much.
Yeah.
And the cheersing cups with the little scrunchie and the charm bracelet. And we felt like those little Easter eggs from Gilmore Girls was like so essential, because it was the coffee and we were still centering the show, and the friendship of it was just a little added element. But I think we're at the point now where so much of the show is the two of us. Like the besties have said, we asked you guys to give us a little elevator pitch of how you would pitch our podcast to a pal, and so many of them, which we will get into later, so many of them are excellent, but a lot of them are like, it's like FaceTiming your friend.
Yeah.
It's like being the third host. It feels like you're talking to your best friends about your favorite show. And that aspect of it felt really important to start including.
Yeah,
so
totally.
we decided to put us in all 4 iterations of the podcast.
Yeah, because we have different segments. As y'all know, we started out just with Gilmore to Say, which was the two of us talking about our thoughts, feelings, kind of anything and everything, mixed bag of opinions. And then we built Gilmore Revisited, of course, which is our recap podcast. Because at first we said that we didn't think that we could watch this show.
It's like in our first episode, we were like, we will never do a rewatch.
Well, because we
and then
felt
like 2 months
yeah,
later.
I know. Cut to 2 months later, and we were like, okay, so we changed our
actually have to.
minds. But it's because we always felt like we would spoil it too much. And it was like, well, why would people listen to a show that would be spoiled? And it's like, of course they're going to listen to a show that would be spoiled if they've seen the show 1,000 times. They want to hear how that show corresponds to their thoughts and feelings about an episode that happens 2 seasons later. So yeah, why not?
And I think that's the thing is like a lot of them, like they're recap podcasts, but a lot of them are referred to as rewatch podcasts. And if you're rewatching a podcast, not a podcast, rewatching a show.
Yeah, you are
on a podcast
watching it.
You're rewatching it.
You're watching it again.
So it makes total sense that in the first episode we're talking about the finale, and we were worried about that at first. Like, are we going to ruin this for someone? It's like,
I know.
If you haven't watched this, what are you doing here? So we have a spoiler full on Gilmore Revisited, very Friday night cocktails vibes.
Oh yeah.
Your presence is required via a contract every Friday.
Yes, it's true.
Unless we're fighting, in which case I guess you don't have to come.
You don't.
But hopefully we're never fighting, the 3 of us.
Also, those are the most interesting episodes, so you might as well come.
Yeah, I might as well.
But then, of course, after we did Gilmore Revisited, we built Gilmore to Consider, which is our hotline because, a lot of people talk about how this feels like a conversation with your friends. Like you're listening to a conversation that you would have with one of your best friends talking about your favorite show. And so we thought, well, why not actually be able to have conversations with these people who are listening to us on the other side of this and be able to hear their opinions because they matter just as much as ours do. And so we built a hotline called Gilmore to Consider.
More to consider, because there was more to consider, especially because even in our early episodes, people were commenting saying that like they were yelling at us in the car, they were responding to us, like we couldn't remember something and they were just shouting it at us because we couldn't remember it in the moment, but they knew.
Yeah.
Or they had different opinions, or they were disagreeing, or they were like emphatically in agreement with us. And finally opening up the hotline and getting to hear your voices and feeling like all of these names that we have seen on Instagram and YouTube and Patreon pop up and getting to hear your voices and be a part of the show is so nice. Hearing what it means to you. Do you remember when that father and daughter called in?
Of course I do.
That one
100%.
still gets me.
There are some of our Gilmore to Consider callers that have like really sat with me. Remember the woman who had worked with or knew Sam Phillips? Yeah. Or like either went to church with her or something and knew that her name was not actually Sam Phillips and called in. Oh my God. So fun.
Yeah.
But the
or
father,
our bestie on Patreon who was listening to Patreon episodes the day she was getting ready for her wedding to calm down.
Yes.
That one.
Oh, that one really got me. But recently we
still
had
makes me
someone
cry.
call in, which honestly made my heart explode. It was our listener, Lanny, whose voice we had never heard before. Hi, Lanny. But we had never heard her voice before. Blur, 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 blur. But we had never heard her voice before, which I think is it was so cool to be like, oh my God, I've seen your name so many times on Instagram, Patreon.
Your face, your icon.
Yes.
Your voice.
But to hear your voice because you listen to our voices all the time, that was a really cool moment. And so to be able to experience that together was a lot of fun.
And then the person who called in yelling, that was still always my favorite one. Forever and always. Because like that's the passion that I want to invoke with this podcast. I want someone to agree so much, but I also want someone to disagree so hard that they can't help but call in and
yell at us
about this fictional world that we all obsess about too much.
It's so true. And then of course we built Gilmore to Read. Do you remember that I had asked you back in like, I want to say April of 2022, I was like, hey, we should start a book club. And by we, I mean, you should start a book club. I don't read.
Even just the thought of it stressed me out so much.
We were doing too much. Yeah.
I was like, no, actually, I know. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Not right now. I mean, of course, at the time, I really wanted to do it. Yeah. But I was like, we actually have a lot going on at the moment.
We have a lot happening at the moment. Maybe could you put a pin in this?
Let's button that, put that aside.
Yeah. But I'm glad that you started it when you did. You started it like a year ago.
Yeah, in May last year. And I needed some time to really mull it over. And I think the thing that actually kind of like was like the final straw, the last thing I kind of needed to get over to get into it, because like finally we're making the time for it. But it was actually Emily Henry, who I am like a notorious stan for, was that she was talking about how much people would love romance if they just read it. And I think that's why I wanted to make a romance book club so bad, is because I was like, if I can introduce this to you via something that you already love and kind of make it feel like these romances are Gilmore Girls fan fiction in a way, I think I could get you there, because like just like the hopefulness that exists in a romance novel, I think that so many people can just relate to that. And I remember reading that and I was like, yeah, that's what I want. I just want to find things that feel like this show, because we do have two. One of them where it's like where you read I'll Follow, where we read books that we might have read if she was reading current books today, or books that she was reading on the show. But reading is sexy. I just wanted to like, I wanted you to read romance because I think you would like it if you like the show, but like things that feel like the show, voices that feel like the show, like tropes, friends to lovers, writers, that sort of thing, where it's like, I think you would like this if you read it.
Yeah. And what I love about it is that you've been able to connect with so many writers who are authors who have written books because you've been in the process of writing a book. And I love that throughout our friendship and throughout this podcast, I remember when you told me you were writing a book and then you actually finished the first draft of it last year. And it's been really cool to see how like our lives have aligned in a way have grown like alongside this podcast growing, which is very cool. But I love that it's giving you the opportunity to connect with other writers who have also had Gilmore Girls inspire their writing.
Yes. Every single writer I've ever reached out to about being on the podcast is a Gilmore Girls fan. I always say it's not a prerequisite. You don't have to. We can skip that. We can talk about pop culture or something else you love.
Yeah.
Because that is like very much the brand of our podcast and the show. But every single one of them is like, I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan. My favorite was Adrienne Young, who is the author of Spells for Forgetting and more recently, The Unmaking of June Farrow. She was on a media blackout and was not talking to any podcasts or any news outlets and decided to do our podcast because it was Gilmore Girls. And I thought that was so much fun because like of all things to talk about, it's Gilmore Girls that she was the most interested in because she falls asleep to it every night for like the past 5 years and uses it like a lot as reference in her books, which you couldn't feel that unless you knew it, I think, because her books are just so good. They always feature a small town as well. But they're just so good. And I think that that's the same thing for like most of the writers I've talked to is like either the publicists or themselves are like, this is such a cool thing that like we don't always have to talk about writing or the book. We get to talk about Gilmore Girls. And I was like, I do it every day.
Yeah.
Welcome to my life. But I've got to make like such good friends too from it and like befriend a lot of these writers, which is so unexpected and so much fun.
I know, which is
and
so
also just
great.
getting to talk to besties about books.
Yeah.
I love when y'all message me and you're like, I had never heard of this book before and now I have read all of the books by this author. That's my love language.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. I love all the ways in which the show has evolved, which is why we decided that we wanted to do a rebrand. You know, like we mentioned before, at first, we kind of started out with something that was like, you know, what will people want to see when they hear that it's a Gilmore Girls podcast? Cup of coffee, right? That's going to draw them in. Yeah. And then when we decided to elevate it a little bit with Emily Kelly, it was like, oh yeah, two friends clinking coffee cups.
2 cups of coffee.
2 cups of coffee. And we
What
really...
if we just did 3 cups of coffee?
With every year that we do this show, we just keep adding a
just
cup
do
of coffee.
more and more.
Yeah, pretty soon there's going to be 12 cups of coffee on one podcast cover. But part of the reason that we wanted to, you know, rebrand was because we wanted to incorporate our friendship into it. When we initially set out to do this podcast, of course, as many of you know, we talked about it and we actually let our listeners on Patreon listen to the first 2 episodes of what used to be the show, which was called Written in the Stars.
Oh my God.
And when we started it, you know, Haley and I, as all of you know, or many of you know, were complete strangers when we started this podcast together. And when I reached out to her famously in 2021 on TikTok over the summer, so about 3 years ago at this time.
You actually reached out to me on Instagram because we have graduated our friendship.
Yes,
from
we
not
were
just
following
being
each
TikTok
other
mutuals,
on
being
Instagram.
mutuals.
Yes, it
Y'all
was
know
very
how big
official.
that is.
It was very official.
For strangers.
And so I reached out to her very boldly and said, like, should we start a podcast together? And so we hopped on, I want to say in August, because I remember sitting out on my terrace on my computer and being like, hi, hello.
Yeah.
And having a conversation with you about what we should call the show. You had created this beautiful spreadsheet, which was amazing, and was like ideas and topics and like guests that we could have on, like dream guests. And of course, we wrote Lauren Graham and Amy Sherman Palladino, and we're still manifesting that. But
yeah, y'all can come on anytime. Anytime now.
As if they're listening
It
to
felt
us.
so high stakes then too.
It did. It really did. But I remember us talking, and we landed on this name called Written in the Stars because we felt like our friendship had kind of been written in the stars. We're both writers. We were like, this is the perfect,
We're going to talk about the
title.
writing.
We're going to talk about the writing. Exactly.
It's in the show. It's an episode title.
Obviously, yes. And then I think that our next conversation was us trying to record our first episode. And initially, I don't know if we've talked about this on pod, we were going to script our episodes.
And it was going to be terrible, y'all.
We
thought it was going to be cool.
So
because it was going to feel like Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
It was going to be fast paced, lots of dialogue.
Yeah.
And like what we were going to write 160-page scripts every week.
I think about that now and I'm like, what were we thinking?
What
I
were
mean,
we gonna
I get
do?
it. Here, I remember what we were thinking. We were thinking this show was scripted and we were thinking it was
Yeah.
fast paced and we wanted to
I
make
don't know
sure
what we were thinking. Yes, I do.
Actually, I do. Because I was the one thinking.
Because I thought it.
And it was that we really wanted to create a show that felt like Gilmore Girls, not realizing that us and the building of our friendship was going to make the show feel like Gilmore Girls.
Yeah. It was like accidental how
was
we
very
made it
accidental.
feel that way. And I think it's just because of the way that we talk. We were raised on Gilmore Girls. Like Lauren Graham, Lorelai Gilmore is our alternate mother.
Truly.
Who raised us to kind of talk this way, the sense of humor that we have, both dry and very silly, that I think that it kind of just like our personalities melded together in such a way that it made sense.
Yeah.
Because I think if we had scripted it, I think we would have lost so much of that exploration of not only our friendship, but like the exploration of our perspective of Gilmore Girls and how they were fitting together. Because that was a lot of what Patreon did for us. Is I think that was the best thing we could have done for Gilmore to say itself, because we were slowly unraveling how each of us felt about things, and we're able to express that more as we picked like themes and topics and characters to talk about on Gilmore to Say on pod, that we were sort of discovering on Patreon with our Patreon members, with our besties there. And I think we would have totally missed out on that if we were doing it behind the scenes, scripting it.
100%. I think the way that we've been able to connect with each other, but also connect with the community around us there would have been such a barrier there. And I don't know that it would have been it would have been its own version of fun, but I think it would have gotten tired really fast.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that we chose to do it this way.
Especially because some of my favorite episodes are where we just get on and start talking.
I know.
Like,
it's great. It's truly great. But before we get into what's changed, what's remained the same, because of course, just to, put everybody's concerns at ease, because there were people who messaged us when we said that we were doing a rebrand being like, don't change the podcast. And we were like, we're not changing the podcast. The podcast just has a new outfit on. Okay.
We don't have that many ideas.
Trust us.
It ended there. It ended at the picture. It ended at us being 97 degrees in New York City in sweaters.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I would love to tell you guys about our experience rebranding and where we came up with these ideas and what we decided to incorporate into these segments that we've built over the last 2.5 years together. And that includes you. So let's start with our diner photo shoot.
Yeah,
Haley
take
and
a look at it.
Yeah.
If you're on Spotify or Apple or Amazon, wherever you are right now, just take a look.
Yeah. I remember
unless you're driving, don't look.
Yeah, don't look.
Don't look if you're
well, they might be
driving.
able to look at it on their screen depending on how new their car is,
Yeah, but very quick. Don't be a distracted driver.
Don't get distracted. So Haley and I kind of talked about doing a rebrand a while back. I remember I brought this to you at the end of 2022 and I was like, hey, should we do a photo shoot? Because we're like, incorporating us into the brand. And I remember you being really hesitant because it was still so new. And I remember you kind of being like, we want to center the show. We want to make sure the show is at the center and the core of this. And I don't want it to be like taken away from by putting us in there and confusing people, which I understood. But I was like, I think we can work towards that. And we did, which is great.
We did. Yeah. We also didn't have the time then. It was
Some of us also didn't have the hair.
Haircut era.
Yeah. Some of us didn't have the hair.
If you've been here since haircut era, we love you.
Hairgate,
Thank
if you will.
If you have not, you can go back to, what was it, fall 2022 and catch up there and get some hair
perspective.
Info, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. Boy, was it bad.
Yeah.
What a bad era of my life.
I think it would have been a bad time. Like looking back
Yeah.
on it, it just
Oh, yeah, for
wasn't
sure.
right. We just needed the very cute Emily Kelly cups cheersing
Yeah.
illustration with the little Easter eggs that just felt right.
Yeah, it was a nice little upgrade without veering too far away from our brand, which is what we really wanted to maintain in doing this rebrand. Even though we're incorporating ourselves into it now, there are still elements of our old brand and the brand you know and love that are still incorporated into it because we
Yeah.
think that that's really important. But to start, Haley, I remember when we started really diving into this about what we would do if we decided to do a photo shoot together and if my hair grew back and if it was blonde again.
If we weren't sure.
I wasn't sure. I
We
was
were
like,
going to go for a wig.
am I ever going to look like myself again? Anyway, that's another story. You can listen to that story somewhere back there.
Some other time.
Haley suggested a diner photo shoot. And I remember us being like, yeah, we don't want it to be too Riverdale because there were like Riverdale
No.
photo shoots that were in a diner that were very cute. We didn't want it to be too like Grease, but we did want it to have that
Yeah.
element that Rory and Lorelai have at the end of the pilot episode where it zooms out and it's like through the window. And the minute that we really
Yeah.
decided we wanted to do a through the window shot, I think it really clicked for us. And we were hoping
Yeah.
that we could work with the right people to bring that vision to life.
Yeah, because that's what I saw. And them in the diner when like they're looking out the window too. Because I was like, oh, that could be fun too. But I
Like
didn't know
1,
it'd
2,
be on
3,
the other
he's
side.
yours. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was
Totally.
really that like last pilot moment that came to me that I was like, that's it. That's what we have to figure out.
Totally.
But where is Luke's?
Yeah, and that was part of the problem, right? Is that, we weren't sure if we wanted to do it in New York because New York doesn't necessarily offer those small town vibes. And then we were trying to
Yeah, for
find maybe,
diners.
yeah, they do. And
Georgia
we're
offers the
trying-
small town vibes,
They
but
do.
not necessarily the diner. We were like Waffle House, which Tara had never heard of Waffle House before.
Well, I've heard of a Waffle House, but like not the brand.
no.
Waffle
House.
Yeah.
That was wild to me, but it was also it's kind of a southern thing, but I think it hits like I think it goes a little bit north, but I don't know how far. But I think I tried to maps the closest one to you, but she never heard of it before. So I'm sure a lot of you had not heard of it either, but
Yeah.
the southern girlies are gonna be like, Waffle House? It's on
Hello.
every single corner of every single street.
Listen, there are so many things in the Northeast that I'm sure if I was like,
I know.
this,
kind
you'd
of
be like,
I kind of want to take you to a Waffle House when you come here. Just for
oh,
the
I can't wait to go
experience.
there. I can't wait to go to Publix. Are you kidding? I have a
I
list.
know. Though Brett knew what Waffle House was immediately.
did.
Mr. Louisiana.
He did. It's very true. But anyway, we were nervous that we wouldn't be able to find a place in New York City because there are so many people. It's hard for people to accommodate a photo shoot without being like, pay us $1 million to do this photo shoot. So
Yeah.
I happened to stumble upon this place near my apartment called Old John's Luncheonette. And it was perfect. It had the little booth, half chair with like right at the window. And I was like, oh my God, it's perfect. Oh my God, this is it.
It was so perfect. Where is it? It's 67th, West 67th between Broadway and...
Columbus, I think.
No, it's the other way.
No, but that's where Columbus and
Oh, is that where it does the switcheroo?
I think it does the little
Oh,
switcheroo.
okay.
I think.
Yeah.
It's either Broadway in Amsterdam or Broadway in Columbus. It's like that's when they kind of converge and switch.
Yeah.
And it is so
It's so cute. They're
cute.
so nice. The
very
manager,
kind. Shout out to Eric. Eric really helped us out.
I know. He just was so willing to kind of just do whatever we needed.
Yeah.
The food in the picture, the pancakes that we were eating, they were not props. They were
Yeah.
just perfectly looking
We just ordered
pancakes.
that food.
That's
on
just
a
what their
Tuesday
food
morning.
looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
it was
so
great.
good. I had eggs and bacon, was delicious. But
Yeah.
if you notice our pancakes, we tried to do as close as we could as the show, but they are cinnamon apple pancakes, not pumpkin pancakes with cinnamon butter.
That's
But I think they had some sort of cinnamon butter on them.
Oh yeah.
But we had pie, and in true Alexis Bledel fashion, we did not have coffee in our coffee cups. We had water because it was 97 degrees.
Y'all, it was in like the peak of the heat wave in New York
Yeah.
City. And the thing is that the humidity had kind of broken a bit, which was great because honestly, anytime, and it's starting to kind of happen again here in New York where like the humidity is coming back. We're in another like heat rise. It had kind of like tapered off for a bit. Now we're back because it's August. We get it. But I am very ready for
August
fall.
slipped away.
I've been listening
Into
to
a
it
heat
all day.
wave.
Yeah, literally into a heat wave. And I was very concerned because I was like, if we get to the diner and our hair is we don't have many options. And luckily the humidity had broken even though it was so hot. And
It was
so
so hot. And
we,
once the manager Eric recognized that we were like dying, he like iced us.
Yeah.
Turned the air right on.
turned the air right on. It was great.
Got
But
us
we were
iced
wearing
teas.
sweaters,
Yes.
which you can see in the photo, and jeans, and flip-flops, which you can't see. And
Which you purposefully cannot see because we were shown a picture with that and I was like, cut. Slice.
cut it. Yeah. It was comical, but it was so much fun. And so when we decided we wanted to do this rebrand, we were connected with this lovely lady named Emma with ESM, right?
Creative.
With ESM Creative. And she is a dream and a doll. And we had also been recommended this photographer. Her name is Marissa. And turns out they had worked together before. They're also giant Gilmore Girls fans. So it was kismet. It was so perfect.
Yeah.
And we
both
ended
of
up
them
working
got back
with
to
both
us
of
and they
them.
were like,
Oh,
I love Gilmore Girls. I
immediately.
cannot wait to do this.
I know.
And we were just blown away. But sometimes people are like Gilmore Girls fans, you know, you kind of have to like gauge the spectrum.
Yeah.
Both of them are like referencing deep cuts. Do you remember in this
yeah.
episode when this was happening? Or we should do
Completely.
this a little bit like this because this happened in this episode.
Oh yeah, Marissa was like, let's recreate some of Lauren and Alexis's poses from some of their promotional pictures. I was like, we were thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
They didn't exactly like work out the way that we had wanted them to, or else I think we would have used more of them. But just our outfits didn't align in a way that we were vibing with. But the ideas were there. The ideas were just pouring out of both of these women and aligned so deeply with what we had been thinking. And they're also both just lovely and easy to work with. And the fact that they had worked together
So
before,
nice.
so perfect. And also Marissa
Yeah.
had shot Eli Rallo, who we had on our show.
Friend of the pod.
Friend of the pod, had at our live show last October. So it was all just, it all came together so seamlessly. And Marissa did such an incredible job. My best friend Gerardo, my other best friend Sarah were there, and they were so helpful that day.
Angels.
Literal angels. Sarah
It
is
felt
like
like
big
our own
Suki
little
St.
small
James
town.
energy. Oh my God, completely. And they made
Creative
it feel
little small
so
town. Yeah.
comfortable. And so I remember when Marissa took the shots outside, literal angel in 97-degree heat, taking shots of us through the window. She
Completely
came inside.
unbothered.
Oh yeah, she was like, great, let's do this. Like, down for anything. It was incredible. She came in and she showed us some of the pictures just so we could like get a visual on what we, you know, what we were looking at. And Haley's face, like both of us were like, oh my God, that's the shot.
I couldn't believe it. It
Yeah.
felt so, there was so much relief to it because there had been so much anxiety leading up to it to
Yeah.
like that like Tara's vision matched with mine and both of our vision was going to match the photographer and she was going to be able to capture it. And we were going to like, you know, the heat was going to be like not a factor and reflected in the picture, that we weren't going to look like we were melting or that our hair was falling apart
Yeah.
or that people in the background of the diner weren't going to be
Hate us.
vibing with our vibe.
Yeah.
But everything worked out perfectly when I saw that picture. And you were the one that said this that day, that the rest of the day was great because of it. Because
Yeah.
like we got that one shot. We did it really quickly too. So we were able to sit and like, you know, cool off a little bit.
Enjoy our food. Like we ate
chill,
breakfast together.
quite literally.
And yeah. And just kind of like sat. Haley kept pulling her sweater up above her, like around her neck because she was like,
I was wearing a tank top.
She wasn't naked.
Different show.
Different vibes. But she, you know, she kept pulling her sweatshirt or her sweater up around her neck and like fanning herself off. So it gave us an opportunity to just sit and take it easy instead of stressing about the day, because that can sometimes come across in photos when you are like vibrating at such a high frequency and you're like really anxious about getting the shot. And it just made the rest of the day so seamless, as did Marissa's energy, because she's just so easy and like
So
knew what we
good.
wanted. And so we went and took studio shots, which you can see in Gilmore to Consider, Gilmore to Read, and Gilmore Revisited, because we now have different artwork for all 4 segments. Well, 3 of Gilmore to Say. If you include Gilmore to Say, it's 4, which is very cool.
But they all fit under the To Say umbrella because they all are Gilmore Girls. Every single one of them are about Gilmore Girls or relate back to or inspired by. But they all have their own little spin. Like I love the To Consider because it kind of looks like the old text that would be on like your flip phone from 2005. If you were flipping your phone then, maybe you're younger.
Yeah.
But we have 3 phones in it because normally we have 3 voicemails from 3 different callers, and it looks like 3 different callers is calling into this picture of the 2 of us.
My favorite touch is that vintage phone that Haley's holding is her mom's phone from high school.
She literally used to sit on the floor and talk to her high school pals on this phone. And
That's
I
so special.
love it so much.
Yeah.
But that kind of felt like the Emily, you know, classic nod. But we got a flip phone because, of course, Lorelai cycles through tons of different types of phones.
Yep.
We have a little brick phone. All phones from middle school.
Yes, I
So,
love it. Authentic to the vibe,
authentic,
which is great.
Authentic hoarders finally making do. Finally making good.
And then Gilmore Revisited, of course, we wanted it to be like we said, you know, you are cordially invited. In fact, you are cordially required to attend every Friday because we release our Patreon episodes on Friday. And we did a little nod. My dress was a little bit of a nod to Lorelai in Tick, 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 Boom when everybody's like, you look so great.
Which my sister, who does not like, she's not like an avid watcher. She's like a casual watcher. She's only seen a couple because of me. She immediately knew. She saw it and she was like, oh, that's a Lorelai dress. And I was like, oh my God, how did you know that?
Come on, Hannah. I love it. That's great.
I think of that. It's that one and my sweater in the diner one, which is like Rory's pilot sweater vibes that we kind of like tried to play off of there.
And a little bit of the plaid skirts with the Chilton nod.
Yeah.
We wanted to incorporate some patterns while also incorporating like some of us in there.
And feeling very fall because this is a fall show, of course.
Which, speaking of plaid, Gilmore to Read. I love the Gilmore to Read logo.
It feels like a little bit of like a Chilton, you know, a little nod to Chilton, a little schoolgirl, a little hot librarian, as Marissa told me, which like, wouldn't that be the perfect job for me in Stars Hollow?
Yes.
Like at Stars Hollow Library, little hot librarian featuring me. Let me find a book for you in my mini skirt.
I think a lot of people would love that. Perfect. I think it's everything Rory Gilmore also thought she wanted.
Yeah. Like, why does she need to like have like a, you know, she like insulted teachers. Yeah. Like have this big job. Just be the town's hot librarian.
And maybe
that actually sounds like my dream.
She actually might be.
I might leave this podcast right now and go be a hot librarian somewhere.
Well, it was
first I have to get hot and then I have to be a librarian.
I love that we rebrand and that's when you decide to dip.
Yeah. Bye.
I love it. Yeah, I love all four of the logos. I think they perfectly encapsulate us and our vibe. We wanted to give the text of our logo a little bit of an upgrade, so we did.
We capitalized. Did you guys notice? We're important now.
We added capital letters. It's a big shift. But what I also love is that we've started to incorporate Haley's handwriting into a lot of our branding. And speaking
shout out to my Apple Pencil.
Yes, I love it. But speaking of, the reason we're twinning today, and part of one of the elements of our rebrand shoot, because we were both wearing these tees, we are now selling Bad Girls Wear Red Nail Polish. It is in Haley's handwriting, and they are available now at www.gilmoretosay.com.
Of course. And you guys thought we had changed. We'd never.
We would never. I will never not say
still
www.
But I love these shirts. I love them because the prototypes that we're wearing right now were made by my mom in her Cricut and some shirts that we got at Target.
Thank you, Kathy.
But she very carefully, she was so worried to mess it up.
They turned out so great.
But I think she nailed it. And this is exactly what it looks like in the shirts that will be available on the site. But these are just the ones that my mom made us. Kathy exclusives.
Yeah.
We would do all of them Kathy exclusives, but we could make like 2 more and then that would be
and then that
That's
would be kind of
sell.
it. They would be really exclusive.
Really limited edition.
Very limited edition.
Yeah.
But yeah, it says Bad Girls Wear Red Nail Polish, which is what Lorelai says
I'm wearing
to
blue,
Rory.
but don't look.
Yeah. Don't look too close. Blur, 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 blur.
Blur. I have
But
blue nails if you're not looking on YouTube.
If you're not with us on YouTube, Haley has blue nails. But if you're not with us on YouTube, check us out at gilmoretosay.com. Bad Girls Wear Red Nail Polish, because that's what Lorelai says to Rory as she's painting her nails before she goes to Chilton, which I love.
I think she actually says to her, bad girls always wear red nail polish, but this fit better on the tee.
It's true. This one fits better.
Yeah. And I do like it that it's my handwriting. It's
it
fun,
adds a really
cute.
personal element to it, which I think is fun. And I'm just really happy. I'm happy with how the process went when we took the pictures. I mean, we were so excited about them. We wanted to share them, but we said no. So
immediately.
Yeah.
But we wanted to share them and we also said no. Yeah. Sometimes you get to be the hosts, but you also have to be the business owner.
Yeah, you have to be the bosses. That's the hard part.
Yeah. The host really, really wanted to share it with you, but the bosses said no. So
yeah.
Tara and Haley wear a lot of hats and They wanted to put the fun hats on, but the business hats came on.
Yeah.
when
But
we
we're
took
so
pictures.
happy that that date is finally here. It was only a month, but we
Yeah, it was only a month.
we
This
worked
was all
really
very
meticulously
recent.
with Emma and with Marissa to build this really beautiful rebrand for y'all. So I hope you like it. If you don't tell us, but
Yeah, you don't have to say anything. But if you do like it, let us
tell
know. And we
us.
really hope that you do, because we really like it. And we feel like it just like really reflects what the podcast is, how we love the show, and how we feel about y'all. Because I kind of feel like if you're walking by the diner that we're in the shoot, we're looking at you.
Yeah.
Like you walked by
One,
the
two, three,
window.
you're
and
ours.
You're ours. And like, you walked by and you were like, hey, I want to talk to you guys about Gilmore Girls. And we're like, tell us more.
Yeah. Have
Say
a
more
bite of
to
my
us.
pancakes.
Yeah, have some pie. We got some
Have some
pie
pancakes
for you.
with a side of
We'll get the
pancakes.
third cup.
Yes, then we'll get
And
the
it's
third
for
cup.
you.
I love it. So today we really want to talk about, obviously we want to share with you our rebrand. We're so excited, but we kind of wanted to talk about Gilmore to Say, reminisce on it as we just did. But we also want to talk about, some of the ways in which this show has changed, some of the ways in which it stayed the same. And we opened up that floor on our Instagram stories because, as we've mentioned, you guys are such a huge part of our show. And you are what makes our weird little planet that Haley described earlier turn. And so
I forgot about that. Why'd you have to bring it up? Sometimes people will comment on like our old Instagram posts or like our old episodes on Patreon, and they'll like say something, they'll like quote us. And I'm like, I said that?
I know. There are so many ways.
Now.
So a couple of people that I worked with at the Who's Tommy, they found out that I had a Gilmore Girls podcast. And one of them, Caitlin, she was like, oh, I've been listening to your show. And she was just starting to tell me about some of the things that we talked about. And I was like, Caitlin, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't have a single clue what I said.
You could have pretended that you made that up and I would have found it interesting.
I would have been like, wow. No, we've said so many words. I just don't know what they are anymore.
Yeah. I'm sure we have contradicted ourselves 15,000 times on this podcast.
Yeah, totally.
That'll never change.
Hey, but speaking of plot twists, we asked our besties what plot twists they felt from our show since we started 2.5 years ago. But before we get into those, I kind of want to talk about the plot twists that you and I have felt from each other over the last 2.5 years. You seemed very daunted. Is that a word? You seemed very it was a very daunting thought for us to do that yesterday when I suggested this to you.
It was because when Tara was like, well, we're going to talk about the plot twists that we've had with each other. And I was like, about each other? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, this whole time you found me annoying and you're actually going to break up with me today and you don't want to do this anymore?
No.
Or you're just going to continue to do it and be annoyed by me? And I was like, is this what you're going to tell us in front of all of our besties and all of our best friends?
And I was like, what?
It just brought me back to...
Do you feel better about it now?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Of course. I had to have some time to like figure it out. But we did realize I was not taking one of my anxiety medications for a couple days.
Yes.
So things got a little anxious, and that was maybe at play in that moment. We talk about it in a fun voice.
Yes.
Otherwise it's scary.
Scary.
But it reminded me like way back when we first started WITS, which was the acronym for Written in the Stars, which we also thought was fun because like,
we thought it was so fun.
We're witty. We're so witty. Funny.
WITS. Hilarious. Do you remember when you came up with Gilmore to Say and how that thought just like entered your mind? Because you were the one that named our show. I want everybody to be crystal clear about that. You came to me after like a little hiatus because we recorded Written in the Stars.
We ghosted each other a little bit.
Haley sent it to me and I was like, this is bad. How do I tell her this? Because we were strangers. I didn't know how to tell you this was really bad. I remember where I was. I was in Jersey City. I was walking to get a haircut and I remember being like, I was listening to it and I was like,
I was editing it and I was like, I can't do this.
What do I say? How do I tell this girl this is terrible?
And so we ghosted each other a little bit. We both like needed a break, but we didn't say
to each other. Yeah, and it was funny because you came to New York.
Decided.
You came to New York, and I remember we didn't see each other because I was out of town. I was in Minnesota for Catalyst, and I was like, "We'll talk when I'm back, when you're back, whenever." And then we kind of like,
and then for a month and a half. I don't really remember coming up with it. I do have my note that is still written where I had the idea of Gilmore to Say because I was trying to think of something that would encapsulate like a name of a podcast. You just say it to someone and you instantly know what it's about. And they're like, Gilmore to Say. Very few people I feel like we have to explain it to. But it was
what part I feel like we have to explain to them? That we have more to say.
Yeah.
That part people are like, oh. And I'm like, yeah. Here we go.
But I remember my note is something like Gilmore to Say, mouth imagery. And it's like a intro, idea, chatting about it, outro.
Yeah.
It's very, very basic.
Love.
But I just remember I wanted like kiss. I wanted something like that. And I immediately, it like clicked inside my bones, because Written in the Stars admittedly never like clicked for me. Like it felt, I was like, okay, we can do this. I like it. But it didn't click for me that I was like, oh, this is right. And if she doesn't like this, I'm actually not going to do this with her. That was like the vibe that I had, because I was like, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't like it, she doesn't like good ideas.
Honestly,
was, like, the vibe.
It was a great idea. It was a great
Thank
idea.
you.
And thank God. Thank God you came up with that.
Thank God.
Yeah.
But I just like, I was like, let my brain a little marinate.
Yeah, we just needed some time. Once we saw what we were working with, it was easy for us to kind of take a step away and come back to it. It was also a really busy time for me. Part of the reason that I think we quote unquote ghosted each other was not because it was like so bad we didn't want to talk to each other. I went back to Mrs. Doubtfire, and
it also became so like back burner. It just kept the burners kept duplicating.
Yeah.
And just back.
Yeah.
Until finally we were like, do you want to do this still?
And I was like, yes, I do.
And now it is all of the front burners.
Literally, all burners are on. And they're all firing on Gilmore to say, firing on all cylinders. So anyway, speaking of the logistics, I'm really curious, working together, what things have been a plot twist before we get into our like actual Gilmore Girls opinions.
Yeah.
Like what?
Oh, but that's what I was saying, like back early on, that you said when I came to this that like my demeanor, very kind of like a calm person. When,
yes,
like,
you're very calm. You're
interact
very
with
even keeled.
That like I kind of can come off as like I'm gonna go with the flow. I'm just gonna do whatever you say. You're gonna do all the work, and I'm just gonna come along with it. I've got ideas, and you're gonna be the one to work on it.
Yeah. Very group project.
That's just the vibe. I give a bad partner to group project.
No, I feel like now that I know you, I feel like you take the lead on a group project and be like, I'm going to do the group project because I know I'll do it right. And that's something that you and I have. We have that in common, is that we feel like we need to take things on because we want to make sure they're done right. And I think when we first started working together, that was one thing that I was like, ooh, I don't know how this is going to go. I was excited by it because I was like, oh, great. She is not like Wallflower going to sit back and let me take the wheel. She's going to actually like drive the car with me, which I love. Which I wasn't
can't drive
totally,
the car though.
Well, we can both have our hand on the wheel, or we could take turns.
Yeah.
Anyway, but maybe it's like Jess in cones, and he's like got the cone, and then he's like, I'm dripping, take the wheel.
That's scary though. Let's go back to our burner analogy. We're both cooking in the kitchen. We're making a really complicated recipe that requires two cooks. Yes. Someone's chopping, someone's mixing.
Exactly. And so I loved that aspect. But at the same time, I think something that took us a while to kind of figure out our work ethic together was what we were both comfortable handing off to each other, like where our strengths and weaknesses were. Because I also remember that I remember having this conversation with you, and I was like, okay, we're gonna have to work on that, because you didn't want anybody else editing this podcast. You were like, I will not have anybody else editing. And I was like, Haley, at some point you're not going to be able to edit the podcast. And you were like, nope.
I did it for like almost, I did it for a year. And then the only reason I stopped is because my hands started going numb. Yeah. Truly the only reason why. I know. Which was like indicative of having an autoimmune disease now. But it was like,
because you and I are very similar, that it was like you were overusing your hands. But it was also because like, part of the reason you held on to that was because it was very important to us to make sure that the finished product that went out there was within our control. It still is. But the fact that we found LaRon shortly after all that started, literally the third member of Gilmore to say, who we are going to get to meet by the time this airs, we will have met her for the first time in person, which is so exciting because we'll have done our event in LA. I hope it went well. Yeah, we'll talk about it in the next episode. Don't worry. Yes. But thank God we found her, because Haley and I started sharing. She found us, because she was a listener. And now she's our number one listener.
She is our first listener on every single thing.
But she gets early access to all the episodes.
And we pay her for her to have early access.
It's true. And thank God, because we had been sharing the responsibility, but at some point it becomes too much. And I was so happy that happened in order for you to be like, okay, I can give this to somebody else. Again, we still listen to the episodes before they go on air.
I have to give this to someone else.
We
listen to everything before it
goes.
But like,
we're still control freaks. Don't get us wrong. That hasn't changed.
LaRon knows that. But I just feel like the relationship worked, and it's fun, even though she's in LA, that like we still are able to do this.
Yeah.
And when we do meet you, LaRon, we will sit and you can have your own little podcast and we will sit live and
shut
listen
up.
to it.
Yeah.
We will shush.
Yeah.
And
Because
you
all
have
you do
floor.
is listen to us talk. So we will shush.
Yeah.
So that was one of my plot twists, was I was like, I was waiting for the moment when Haley was going to have to relinquish editing in some fashion to somebody else. And I'm so glad that you did it with LaRon, literal Earth Angel.
Truly. Mine, a little plot twist for me, was going from the first episode, even if you go back and rewatch it, because we did like the extended cut on YouTube last fall. It was like our first YouTube video. And I really love watching that because you are so much more intense about your dislike of Dean.
Well,
And
I
it's
was
like,
just more intense in general, I feel. I feel my energy in that, because I feel like for both of us, actually, I don't know if you felt this way, so I don't want to put that on you, but I felt like I had something to prove. I felt like I had something to prove, like when we started the show, that like I knew what I was talking about and I had opinions and I was very firm in them. And now it's like, yeah, I have opinions, but they're always changing. I'm going to change my mind.
Like we said, we'll
Speaking
contradict
of.
ourselves a million times.
Yeah.
But you had this intensity, but you had this intensity about Dean. Like you were like, no. But even as we got a couple episodes in, you started softening just a bit. But it wasn't until we got to There's the Rub in season 2 of our rewatch, which is really where a lot of our opinions were being revealed and changing and evolving. Because I think at that time I was also a little bit Team Jess, I think I said. But you were sympathizing with him, and not in a way that was like you were suddenly opening up the gates, getting rid of all your past Dean opinions. Suddenly Dean didn't suck. Suddenly you understood it. It was more of like, no, I mean, suddenly you did understand it. You understood him and his intentions and what went into the behavior, because he is reactive. He's not responsive. And he, in that moment, in There's the Rub, you all know it, when he's fighting in the kitchen, Rory and Jess and Paris are all there, and he's yelling at her. And in that moment, you were like, I think I'm Dean, because you were like, I think I would feel the same, because his feelings are very like understandable here, but it's his reaction here that you didn't like. But you spent a lot of time talking about how you understood him here. And I just remember being like, what is going on?
I mean, I mostly was comparing myself to Dean when I was in high school. Because
Oh, that's what it was.
You know,
I remember the Sour Patch
not
Kids
to say
story.
that I'm not, oh my God.
You can go, you guys can go back and listen to it on Patreon.
Not to say that I'm not reactive now, but I'm reactive in a very different way. I actually took a screenshot of a quote that I saw the other day in anticipation of this episode, because I knew that we were going to talk about this.
There's no way we wouldn't.
Obviously. And it says, I heard a therapist say, your feelings are always valid. Your behavior is not. She explained by saying, feel what you feel, but you need to be accountable for what you do as a result of those feelings. And that, I think, perfectly explains where my thought process on Dean lies today compared to where it was 2.5 years ago. I really understand how he was feeling. I couldn't understand his reactions, but high school Tara totally understood his reactions, because I was a very reactive person when I was in my teens and even my early 20s. And I still feel that need to now. I think that that's, you know, something that I still face in like trying to temper my reactions, because I used to be so reactive when I was younger that I like try to keep everything very close to the vest. We learned that phrase the other day. We didn't
close
learn
to
it.
The vest, not close
we didn't
to
know
the
if it
chest.
was close to the chest or the vest.
Because where do you wear your vest?
On your chest.
On your chest.
Yeah. Both should be right. Anyway, I do feel like over the last couple years, I have recognized that a lot of the reason that I don't like Dean is because I really feel a sense of shame about the way that I would handle situations when I was his age, and knowing that he also handles them the same way.
Well,
in the
I feel like in
show.
a lot of ways, you'll see something that someone does and you're like, that's a part of me that I don't like, consciously or not.
Yeah.
And I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to like that person.
So that was also a plot twist for me, admittedly, that I was like, oh shit, do I not like Dean? Because Dean reminds me a lot of a version of myself that I no longer have, / a version of myself that I'm admittedly a little ashamed of. You know, if people in my life who knew me in high school or even in college when I was very reactive as well, you know, put that energy on me today when I definitively have changed a lot as a person, and we all grow and change and whatnot.
Hopefully.
Am I doing a disservice to the character? Obviously he's fictional, but part of the reason I would get riled up about it is because he represents a lot of men who specifically, and women, but in this case men
and
who have a tendency to say, I'm a nice guy, but then they're, you know, screaming at their wife for not respecting them when they've freshly come from cheating on her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
so
she has gummy bear brownies for
I
him.
know.
Oh.
But yeah, so it's you know, that perspective shift for me was really important, but also a plot twist.
Major plot twist. Yeah.
Major plot twist. Plot twist for us all. And I know a lot of people wrote that in their responses to our question box on
100%.
Instagram, which I'll get to in a second. But my plot twist with you, I feel like in 2022, you would not even whisper a flaw about Logan Huntsberger. And I feel like today, especially as we're in the midst of season 5 right now on Patreon.
I did whisper that one episode.
You whispered it. But remember the Logan's flaws episode? And we had to put flaws in like with stars?
Because it was clickbait. And I also didn't spell it right. So what does it even say? What does it even say?
Yeah, who's to say? But I
was
remember
supposed to say
that was something that was, I know like it was like funny haha, but something that you were apprehensive to do was talk about reasons why you didn't like this character because you love him so much.
Well, that's such a Gilmore Girls thing too, to make the things that you're anxious about a bit. You know what I mean?
Oh,
it's like, I'm going to make about this bit where I like don't talk badly about Logan, like LOL, I don't recognize his flaws, but I do. But it was more of like we've talked about before, that we kind of now have two brains about Gilmore Girls. We have this like love that we have had since we've been watching since the early 2000s when we were watching live. And then we have this part where we just like dissect the show, deep dive on Patreon, sometimes tearing it apart, sometimes absolutely adoring it. But it was hard to keep those separate, and I had to like build up that muscle to do it, because I was like, what if I end up hating Gilmore Girls after doing this podcast? What if I never watch Gilmore Girls again? Like, this is such an essential part of my past, present, and hopefully future, just because I have like found so much comfort in the show. And it's like, if I do this final thing, which is Logan, and tear it apart publicly, because like I know what his flaws are, I can see it, I'm gonna cherry pick them away in this other version. But like, is this like the final boss that I have to defeat? Like, where I can talk about Logan and still preserve him in my little garden in my mind, but while still being able to talk about him on the podcast as I have to. Like, it wasn't until last fall that we even had a Logan episode, but it was because I was finally like, I can safely keep my love and preserve it, which is more important to me, and now pass it on to the podcast world, this world that I created where you guys are the crust and we're the mantle.
Yes.
Science is back. That like I had to get there. And I feel like a lot of people feel that way, because like next month, it's next month, it's September, we're gonna have an episode with Stassi Schroeder, and she even told us, she was like, y'all's job is hard. Because you can't just kind of ignore the things for the things that you love. You have to pull everything apart, and sometimes that'll mess with your love for the show, and I didn't want that, because if I lose that love, I think I also lose the authenticity that exists there, and I would be relying on like my old self rather than my current self to do that if I was like slowly falling out of love with the show. So I wanted to preserve it,
which I think we've done well.
But I've gotten there, because I still watch these season 5 episodes and like kind of pull them apart, but then put them back together exactly how I wanted them, and have the exact same feelings that I do.
And I think that kind of acknowledging the flaws of either an episode or the writing or the characters like has not disrupted our love for the show. I still can watch it. Like when I watch it with Brett, I still am just like
so giddy, like still laughing at.
I'm
like,
watching him watch the show.
Yeah, we've seen these episodes 100 times, but we still laugh at all of the jokes as if we have never heard them before.
Still love the characters. Like I still love Jess Mariano, even though I'm acknowledging that like Logan is, you know, arguably better for her.
This is exactly where I was going next, because I got a little bit Team Jess in season 2, which was a plot twist for myself. I recognized it. And even my cutie YA vibes for Dean.
Yes,
that was a little
that's
plot
true.
twist for me.
But the last thing on my list was going to be you kind of jumping into the Team Jess camp because you were like vehemently no about him.
So cute though.
I
Like
know.
season 2 Jess is fucking cute, y'all.
I know.
Like
he is.
the little antics that boy has. Season 3 less. Season 2 antics abound for this cutie little man.
I know.
But alternatively, mine was that you thought that Logan was the best boyfriend.
Yeah, which here's the thing is that what I will say is that I put a TikTok out. I remember I was literally in this exact spot because this used to be my bedroom before I turned it into my office. And I remember laying in bed because people kept asking me about my Logan thoughts. And this was right around the time that you and I became like TikTok pals.
Oh.
So this was like 3+ years ago. And people were like, what are your thoughts on Logan? And I was like, do I think that Logan like had moments where he was arrogant? Yes. Do I think that he's like kind of like the rich blonde to get Yale? Yes. Do I think they were right for each other? Yes. Do I think he was the best boyfriend for her? Yes. Like growing up is realizing that you can be Team Jess and also think that Logan is the best boyfriend for her.
Yeah.
You know?
I just think that, I don't know, I didn't anticipate that from you to like actually come out with that and like say that. And especially as we're getting into season 5, I'm just finding that you always say that you know the early seasons better, but you still know season 5 just as well.
That's true. I am finding that season 5, I am knowing a lot more than I thought I would. I think when we get to 6 and 7, I think I talked about this in a previous episode, I think I'm going to be a little more lost.
When we get to 7,
admittedly,
we're both going to be a little bit lost.
But do you remember when I said that season 5 I thought was the strongest season of Gilmore Girls plot-wise over season 2? Yeah. I remember you were shocked that I said that. That was like early 2022. That was in rankings.
Oh my God. I cannot wait till the time that we finish season 7. So we'll be done with season 7 and the revival like this time next year to revisit rankings.
Ooh, I know.
That
because
is
the thing is that
so
like season
good.
2 is so strong. Don't get me wrong. And for me, they're kind of neck and neck plot wise, especially as we're watching season 5. But season 5 is so good. And Brett Thiel is loving season 5. Last night, he asked me to watch Gilmore Girls. He said, can we watch Gilmore Girls? I was like, yes.
Yeah,
yes, we can.
Yes. Love it.
I have a feeling he's going to be Team Logan.
We'll see. We'll have to chat with this man because I have many a question for Mr. Brett Thiel, which I learned was his last name. But I feel like that's a perfect segue into our besties plot twist that they had. Because speaking of seasons, I think that because early on in the podcast, I think it was episode 1, where like I was the later seasons, you were the early seasons. We weren't sure about 4. I think we said we needed a season 4 correspondent. That like when we had so much love for season 4, so many people were like surprised, but also surprised within themselves that they had that much love for season 4 too.
I know.
It gets lost in the middle, but
it
it's
really
so
does, but
good.
it's so good. And we should talk to Sheila Lawrence about this. I hope that we did when we are with her on Sunday.
We have not yet visited with her, but I hope that if you were there at the live show in LA that we did talk to her about it.
Yeah. Maybe we'll talk about that more in our next episode. But yeah, it is so good. And even Brett said, like, we're now on season 5, but he was like, I think that's the best season so far of Gilmore Girls.
Was so
season
good.
4. Yeah, it was very good. There were parts of it he didn't love. He didn't love Rory's storyline, and I understand
we felt that way too.
We felt that way too. But it's just so good. It's cozy. It's comfy, and I kind of love that Rory's not necessarily involved with anyone. That is until the end, of course. But I love that we're getting just like Rory at school vibes. This new era of the Gilmore Girls where their lives are still intertwined, but they're also quite separate from what we're used to. It's just so good. You get some really strong episodes, some really strong story arcs in there that I love. I really do.
Just so good. And the besties, y'all were surprised by how much we loved it.
Yeah. Plot twist.
Either because you did love it and you were surprised we felt differently, or you learned to love it alongside us.
Yeah, totally.
But a lot of the besties, of course, mentioned that you softening to Dean. That was a big one.
Yeah.
As well as us having a whole Dean episode where we talked
Dean
nicely
love
about
episode.
him.
Yeah, that was a plot twist. That was a plot twist for us too.
One for me personally was someone said Haley remembering Madeline and Louise. I have to tell you, when I read this, immediately I was like,
which is which?
which is which? Like that one's like, that can't stick in my mind. That
I
one's
know.
like, I'm rubber, you're glue.
I
Like,
know. Yeah, genuinely.
like we're
Whatever
both
you
rubber.
say just bounces right off of
That's
me.
bounces off of
It
me.
might not
like,
stick
'cause
on you, but it certainly didn't stick on me.
it certainly did not stick on me.
Yeah.
But the Haley softening towards Jess and
Yeah.
having my teen Jess moment in season 2
Mhm.
was one that was said a lot. Someone said that the fact that I didn't really like the Bracebridge dinner, that was a plot twist
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, I know. Me too. That was a plot twist for me.
Someone said the fact that the show has a lot less coffee than they anticipated as we're doing our coffee count.
Yeah, right? There's a lot of talk about coffee.
They
There's
talk so much about coffee.
and there is a lot of consumption of coffee, but how much they talk about coffee versus how many cups of coffee we see them consume, the ratio is much different than I thought it was going to be.
Me too. Someone said the Tom love.
Oh, same.
That is a plot twist that, like, who knew that we would have so much love for our man, Tom,
and
the contractor.
Bootsy.
The contractor, Tom.
And Bootsy. Like, Bootsy to me, those are two
Yeah.
characters that I didn't expect to have so much love for until we really dove into until really season 2. I was just like,
Yeah.
those two guys, those are my men.
Yeah. And
That's my
then the rest of
man.
the plot twists were actually about us, about that we were strangers before the podcast, that we hadn't met in person. And then when we actually did meet in person, and the other one that was kind of like related to that was that we're actually best friends and we're not just two people doing a podcast together.
I know.
But it's because of the podcast that happened. So I feel like
Yeah.
all of those fit into one, because it's like, we didn't know each other. Plot twist. We met each other 8 months into doing this. Plot twist. We're best friends.
Yeah.
So it's like, that one
Yeah.
was twisting and turning.
Truly. Which is also another reason why the rebrand is so special, because part of the reason we, ended up waiting until now is because you can really see our friendship through these photos, which I love.
Pals.
Pals.
Oh, the last plot twist is that we don't do this in the same room.
Yeah. Which, put a pin in that for later.
Put a pin in that.
So speaking of Tara and Haley, we asked everybody what classic Tara and Haley opinions look like. I know a lot of them have changed, but what has stayed the same? Like, when you think of us, what do you think of?
What is our signature, if you will?
Yeah. Okay. So classic Haley, of course, everybody said Logan's superiority. I love Logan. My favorite was, I like Logan.
I also love when you do it. You kind of do it with your Clara impression.
Oh my God. Brett and I watched Tippecanoe last night. So Clara was in it and he was like, oh, she's a teenager now. I was like, yeah. She makes one cameo and then we never see her again. Anyway, the No Sparkly Heart, of course, your signature No Sparkly Heart. I remember the TikTok that you did where you were like, no, but with like the pink sparkly heart emoji. And who knew that it would become like a phenomenon? I love it.
Knew?
That Vineyard Valentine is underrated.
Oh, good episode.
You
That's actually
love-
what our book club this month is, a pick from what Rory is reading in Vineyard Valentine.
I remember. Yes, I love
Yeah.
it. When was the last time you watched that scene? You haven't watched that scene in a while. You used to watch that scene all the time.
I have not gotten hyped up from Mitchum Huntsberger.
Yeah.
Huntsberger, who are you?
Yeah. You used to watch that religiously. You were like, oh, I didn't watch my scene today. It's going to be a weird day.
I know. Maybe has the podcast gotten better since then or worse? Maybe I need to pick it back up. This
right.
fall, coming to you this fall, me post that scene.
Perfect. I love that energy. That Luke is mid.
Do I still feel that way? Yes. Actually, I don't necessarily feel that Luke is mid. I feel like Luke is not right for Lorelai. But everything we have seen up until this point in our rewatch, up until mid-season 5, not mid. It is
No,
because
not
I'm a
mid.
season 5 and 6 girly. That is
It's
the
because
only
in season
reason.
6, his character takes a turn. And you know what's interesting is right now Brett is starting to get nervous. He's like, I am nervous. I said,
Yeah.
why? He goes, because look at all these seasons that are left and they're together now. And that tells me that something's going wrong.
Something's gonna happen.
And I was like,
yeah.
and I think he thinks
You feel
it's
it
going to
in the
be
air, Brett.
Lorelai. I think he thinks Lorelai is going to be the one to mess it up, which we talked about this in our like unpopular No Sparkly Heart opinions GTC last week, that like, I think that they share equal footing when it comes to the blame.
I think that was Lexi. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I am curious on Brett's thoughts when things start to unravel and what that looks like
Me
and how
too.
he feels. Because right now he has such cutie vibes for Luke and Lorelai and he's
Yeah.
loving
Because
it.
Season 4, Luke, end of season 4. What a man. What a
Superior.
man. What a man.
Truly.
Season 6,
And
Luke.
Season
mid as
5,
possible.
he's doing great. But we have had some notes on his behavior.
There's
And
been
also,
some anger there.
as
He's
we
an
talked
angry
about
man.
last week, kind of compared him to Dean a little bit in the way he reacts.
Not wrong,
Feelings
not
valid.
wrong.
Reactions?
Okay.
Not. Anyway.
Yeah. What a man in season 4, but not when he's kicking the car. Okay, there's some mid to Luke.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he's completely mid, but there is some mid to that, man.
Yeah. She loves when Marie breaks her arm.
I do. What can I say?
That Logan is Richard, not Christopher.
That's what really blew me up on TikTok.
That's true. Of course, that everything can connect back to our girl Taylor Swift.
Yeah, of course.
This was my favorite one. I'm going to end with my favorite one and then the one that made me laugh the hardest. My favorite one is that someone said Haley is very loyal to her favorite characters, which I think is so true. You're very loyal to those characters. Like, even when, you know, kind of speaking to what we were talking about earlier, when you're like, I, of course, I'm going to acknowledge Logan's flaws, but I love him. I am loyal to him. Like, yes, I know that Rory has made really bad choices, but I love her. I looked up to her when I was younger. Like, you're very loyal to the characters that you love.
I like that.
I think is great. And then to end it on a funny haha, when she cut her hair, she cut her brain.
Wait, you said that.
No, I think you said that, and I thought it was so funny. That was a response from one of our listeners. When she cut her hair, she cut her brain.
That.
Yeah. You didn't say it. It's just the fact that you said it to me and I lost it.
You lost your mind. Okay, that was actually an episode where we had a problem recording it and we like couldn't get it done. And so we had to redo it. And we were like, we're not going to. We're just going to go with the bad audio or bad video or whatever it was.
Your video didn't
yeah. And
your video didn't record. And
yeah,
you were like,
and I was like a still image for the whole time.
I have to keep it.
I was like, we
You
can't.
cut your hair, you cut your
that
brain.
will never exist again. So
I know. It was just so good.
We had
to.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Lay it on me. What's classic Tara?
Of course, Dean sucks.
Of course.
That's
Dean sucks and No Sparkly Heart will be like the centerpiece of our friendship for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Between the two of us and Gilmore to say.
Yeah.
But that one was like pretty like
unanimous.
The responses there was pretty unanimous. As was the idea of Dean sucks, but I'm gonna defend him real quick.
Yeah.
Dean sucks, but
Dean
inserts
sucks, but
me standing
I
up for him.
understand his feelings a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. The other one that was pretty unanimous was Tom is the hottest man. Someone said he needs a renovation show, and I was like,
oh my God,
would
please
watch.
give me that show. Would sponsor that show.
Could you imagine just in the background of Stars Hollow, Tom had a renovation show that was just like moving about?
I love it.
Love it. Jess is too good for Rory. Jess for you. Logan for Rory.
Yes.
Francie in season 3 sucks. I was surprised by that one, but I was like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Someone said that you like to stay pretty neutral when it comes to things when you're dissecting them. And I was like, I think that's true.
That is true. I try to see all the sides. Yeah, I try.
Whereas I'm sometimes like, no.
Well, again, like that, I think is your loyalty to your favorite characters, to your opinions, which I think is admirable.
Someone said his turkey burgers are very dry.
His turkey burgers are very dry.
Someone said bring on the townies, which I think just meant you're just love of the townies. I love the townies.
Yeah.
Someone said Jess not a good boyfriend, but rather yummy. I agree. Someone said I'm team Jess, but not really. And I was like, yeah, you are team Jess, but not entirely in the way that it maybe is intended to mean.
The thing is that I think that it really just depends on what your definition of a team is. To be honest with you, there's still a world in which I wish he and Rory worked out. When I watched those season 2 episodes and season 3, I'm like, God, I wish these two worked out.
Well, I actually was going to say someone who under her covers on her portable DVD player was watching Rory and Jess kiss by the pond over and over again, like until early hours of the morning. She can call herself Team Jess. She can, like, you're Team Jess actually.
No, for real. Like, Team Jess in my heart and in my core. But, you know, watching Logan and her relationship with Logan and also being a grown-up myself now, you know, it's just, it's really hard. I am. It's really hard I just think it's hard to not acknowledge their relationship and how strong and solid and right it was. Yeah. Even though it had its flaws and moments. And that does not mean that I feel that way by the time we get to the revival. I just understand it. And I wish, like, even in 2016, everything in my heart was like Jess and Rory forever. Jess and Rory.
Yeah. And I think that still exists there for you, but I think sometimes on the pod you present more balanced opinions while still holding those true to your heart. One of my favorite ones is the last one, and it's actually a quote that whenever they hear "we gotta clock that."
Oh yeah, I do say that a lot. We gotta clock that.
We gotta clock that.
Fine.
But those are all of the classic Taras, which I was totally anticipating. The one that surprised me was the Francie one, but I was like, that's true.
That's true. But I feel like we came to that conclusion together.
We did.
We did not like her in season 3. I mean, I didn't really particularly like her in general, but it's moreover that I didn't like her storyline in season 3.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Those were all good ones. Thanks for submitting them, besties. Loved them. Speaking of submitting them, we asked y'all to describe our podcast, like a little elevator pitch in the questions box. So it would be short. Couldn't have a lot of them. Couldn't have a lot of characters, if you will. Some people did multiple ones. But we have some of them here, which were some top faves.
Yeah.
That just, some of them I feel like really accurately describe the podcast. Like we got to steal this, but others just made me laugh.
Yeah. Read them off, girly.
I don't really have any like particular order here that I did them in, but I'm going to start with the last one that I have here, which is a deep dive in the details for true Gilmore fans. I loved that one. That was from Jessica. And I just was like, yeah, that is perfect. Then our next bestie, MC Nada, I think it is. The show about girlhood that you need in your life.
Yeah.
Obsessed.
I love it.
Kenley D22 said they know it all when it comes to Gilmore Girls, which y'all might disagree with that sometimes when you're yelling at us.
I know,
because
it's
we can't
true.
remember it.
It's
We'll
true.
remember it later.
I was going to say, by the time we get to the end of our rewatch, I have a feeling that that will be true.
There are so many times, though, where we'll have a question about something on Patreon, and then the next day when we get on, I'll be like, oh, do you remember when you asked this?
Yeah,
it was this.
it's this.
And
Yeah,
I'll like have thought about it all night long.
It's so funny because I think I told you this. My friend Garrett is watching Gilmore Girls for the first time. I met him at Tommy as well. And so he's texting me updates, and it was so funny. He gets to the episode where Luke like has the sledgehammer, and he, you know, obviously famously
the wall.
puts it through the wall. And he was like, oh, Luke with the sledgehammer. I don't know if I should be scared or turned on. And I was like, both. I said, oh my God, Garrett, There's the Rub is next. There's the Rub is my favorite episode. I think that's the next one, right? He goes, yeah, you freak. There's the Rub is next.
That happened to us when we were at the Mayflower Inn in Washington Depot. And that girl, she was like talking about how she was on red light on the wedding night. I was like, oh, they're going on the road trip to Harvard in the next episode. We're going on a road trip tomorrow. And she was like, how did you know that? And I was like,
because I'm afraid. Yeah.
That was weird. That was weird.
It was weird that I knew that. Yeah. It was so funny. I died when he said that. He was like, yes, you freak. There's the Rub is next.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's true. Just two freaks.
In
that same vein,
freaky ladies.
Abigail Stone 10 said 2 of your best friends talking about your favorite show.
Fun.
In depth, like freaks.
Yeah, like the freaks we are.
Yep. Someone else said, Maddie Allison said, show about hating Dean and sometimes Taylor Swift.
That is also accurate. I would also say that was probably the beginning of our show, was like hating Dean and also incorporating Taylor Swift. I feel like that was the beginnings of Gilmore to Say, and obviously it's evolved so much since then.
Yeah, and it still trickles into it. I couldn't tell if that was a compliment or a dig, but I took it as a compliment.
I love it.
I love it. Thanks, Maddie. Someone else said, Daniela, who I have seen before, she said very serious silliness, which is exactly what I want to do.
Truly.
I love to take silly things seriously, and that's exactly what we're doing here.
I love it.
But my personal favorite was from Katie Hickey _96, and she used the sparkly emojis on either side of this to emphasize it, and she just said, girly cult.
Just a girly cult. Just your classic girly cult.
We're just your classic girly cult. What else can we do?
Yeah. Honestly, what else can we bring you?
We're just
with girly
obsessed
cult
with
realness. Sparkly.
Yeah, we're just we're just obsessed with our little show. Speaking of, we're going to be talking to Amanda Montell from Sounds Like a Cult.
Yes,
about the cult of Gilmore Girls.
Yes, we're going to be dropping that episode in October, but we're talking to her at the end of the month, which I'm very excited about because I do feel like the Gilmore Girls fandom does sometimes feel like a little bit of a cult. It's like culty vibes.
It's
also
cultish. Like, she has a book called Cultish that I'm reading right now. And
I'm
like,
really?
It's not a cult. That's what I say about Taylor Swift too.
I was going to say Taylor Swift definitely feels like a cult sometimes.
I told my mom many a time, I'm like, I'm in a cult and that's fine. I might be a cult leader now.
Apparently so. Gosh.
Don't buy into it.
I guess that's kind of the point though.
We're wearing matching shirts.
Oh God. All right. We've got to stop. It's too much.
Get the shirt.
Oh my God. Yes, you can visit www.gilmoretosay.com.
Gilmoretosaycult.com.
Join the back.
Don't go there. Cult. I don't actually know where it's going to take you.
But thank you to all of our besties who wrote in for the plot twist, for the classic Tara and Haley, and for the elevator pitch of our podcast. It's so cool to talk about the ways in which this show has remained the same, but also changed and evolved, and kind of reminisce on the things that we got to do step by step together. And one of the things that we have not done together that's not really been checked off of our bucket list amongst the myriad of things that we have done over the last 2.5 years is that you and I have never recorded an episode together in person. We've done Gilmore Galentine, but that's it. That was very different. It was a live show. And we did our live show, of course, but we have never recorded an episode together in person until next week.
Until our next episode.
We are going to be at the Spotify studios in Los Angeles together after our live event in LA, and Haley and I are going to record our first episode together, which we're really excited about. We were going to incorporate this into today's episode, but knowing that we were going to be right near Spotify and together and recording an episode, we were like, we have to do this together in person.
We have to do it. And that was the thing, is like with our Spotify partnership, they were like, if you're ever in LA, come to the Spotify studios, come record.
We love
and we're
them.
like, when are we ever going to be in LA?
Yeah.
And then we had our LA live show, and then it wasn't going to like work out timing wise. And we were like, let's make it work. And so we're going to go, but we were going to incorporate this segment into this episode because it feels like it flows so much with what this is, because the idea of this podcast has always been that we went from strangers to best friends over this shared love of something. And when we first started watching, we were learning each other's opinions about things. Like as you were learning things, so were we about each other. But now we have gotten to the point where we feel like we can anticipate how the other person feels about things, kind of like newlyweds can. Like when you go to a wedding shower and they play a game where they're guessing each other's answers because they know each other so well. I feel like that is Tara and I about Gilmore Girls.
And we'll have more to say on that in the next episode.